It is finally that time of the year again where I talk trash about your favorite books and you resent me for it. I wait all year to rant about these books. This is my top 10 worst books that I've read this year. I will link down below the rest of this series. I have done my best, my most surprising, my most disappointing, and a bunch of other videos. You can check those out. But today we're ranting about the books that I couldn't stand. Some of them I couldn't even finish them, but I still have plenty to complain about. Let's get to it. We're starting strong with The Painted Man. I buy a lot of my books used. In fantasy, I used to just buy whatever I would see on list of best fantasy ever, and like 25 cents. What do I have to lose? A lot, clearly. Because I read this in a reading vlog about books that you thought I was going to hate. Obviously, I didn't go out and buy these books. They were already on my shelf sometimes for a couple of years because I had heard some things and I just never got around to reading them. And you were right. I read the whole thing and I hated it. Mainly because I feel like the plot had potential, which that's what pisses me off, right? Demons come out from under the ground at night and they just kill everyone. Humanity developed magic in order to protect themselves, and then demons stopped showing up. So after a couple, centuries, humanity forgot about the magic and started focusing on science, but then the demons started coming back again, and then, humanity is scrambling, trying to remember how to draw those things on the walls to protect themselves on their houses. And that's where you meet the main characters. So interesting, right? And this is where I have to go back once again to explaining that there is a difference between a character being sexist, a world being sexist, and the author. And if the book isn't here, you know where this is going. We have two male characters and their journey starts when their mom, a classic, the main male character, has three women or girls going after him, wanting to stop him from his mission of saving the world by wanting to get married and having his babies. Not one, not two, but three. Of course, that's what women are for. And you could say that the world is sexist, which it is. Like, clearly, very early on, page 14, for example, this man arrives to this little town, this little village, and the woman in charge, people call her behind her back Baron. And she's called an old daughter because she's not a mother. So you get that the world is sexist. Fine. I mean, humanity is dying very quickly due to demons, so reproducing is important. Fine. But then you add everything else, and it's really hard to not be annoyed, especially through the storyline of the female character. Where do I even begin? The reason she starts her journey is because she was engaged to this boy and then he pretended that they had spicy time, so she's very mad, blah, blah, blah. So she decides to learn under the wing of this old woman that lives remotely a little bit. Think old witch. You would think she would have been a decent character, by the way, and she still annoyed me. Anyway, so she spends a couple years learning, but then whenever it's time to learn more, she has to go to the big town, but she can't travel because, again, demons come out from the ground at night. So she has to travel with someone that has this magical circle that protects them. So people warn her that if you travel with a man, what's gonna happen? So for the whole week that she's traveling, this man attempts to grape her every night. And she was prepared, so she poisoned his food every night so he can't get hard, and she only has to deal with the attempts and, his ego from not being able to get it up. So, I just want to say that this is a choice, okay? The author's choosing that this is the plot for the female character. No one is there being like, dude, you have to. No one is forcing him. And that's already very questionable, but this isn't over, of course. So she spends a couple years in that town, and then emergency happens. She has to come back home. And who is the guy that shows up that she could travel with? Yes, the rapist. So she decides, yeah, you know what? Worth it. Let's do that. Which, again... You gotta be kidding me. Luckily, last minute, she ends up traveling with someone else. A boy who turns out forgets all street smart the second they're out. Because, of course, that made complete sense with the character. So they are at this pub at night, and he tells everyone they have this magical circle, which, yeah, that's gonna go well. So, of course, the next time they're on their way, three men followed them, steal their crap, and what do? Yes, they violently grape the woman. All three of them. We're also told that was hard emotionally for the boy. That was important to know. So now they're just there. They're like, well, we're about to get by the demons at night. What's gonna happen? Yes, our hero, our big boy comes back and he saves them. And what does she do to thank him? You know where this is going. She decides to have spicy time with him because that is what a woman does. You've been raped by three men violently? Yes, this is what you want to do. You want to have spicy time with the boy. And then she tells him that she's in love with him. I truly do not care about the excuses that I will be getting in the comment section, mostly on Goodreads. You cannot convince me that this wasn't the worst plotline. Please. This is exactly the kind of fantasy books that I can't stand, okay? First off, you couldn't have thought about anything else for the female character than this plotline. She goes through all of this, and then she just wants babies afterwards. The only reason I'm glad I finished it is because I got to that scene so I could complain about it, but I have no more interest in reading the rest of the story. You cannot convince me that the plot is going to be interesting enough to compensate for this shit. And I'm sure there's more crap in the rest of the series, so I have no more interest in continuing this. I will never read anything else by the author. Again, no one forced him, okay? That was a choice. He wrote this, was like, this is good. We read it a couple of times. And then publishers read this and they were like, this is totally okay. Let's publish this. No thank you. Don't read this. We deserve better. I want better for us. And this isn't it. So, no. I'm glad this is out of my chest. Now, let's complain a bit more. I had the displeasure of reading some freedom this year. I was seeing her books literally everywhere, and I want to know, who does she know? Who is she paying? Because her books are shit. Like, literally, like, I know this is a dramatic video. It's always funny when I'm being dramatic. But genuinely, this is the worst writing I have read on Booktube. I've been on here for like, what, 8 years? I have read or attempted to read over 1,000 books. And this is it. This is the worst writing I have read. I don't understand how it's being published. Like, I know she was originally like self-published on Amazon. Fine. But then someone picked this up and they're publishing this. I would be embarrassed to be publishing this. I know all they care about nowadays, capitalism, is making money, and like they're readable, they're popcorn reads, so they're selling. But like, you cannot tell me that this is the worst book that you came across. I couldn't finish Never Lie, but this one I read the whole thing because I couldn't believe that people were raving about it. I thought the ending was being insane, and that's why people are talking about it. No. Main character comes out of prison, you don't really know why, but you know she was there for a little while, and she gets a job working as a nanny for these rich people. First red flag, in my opinion, is she gets there and the wife is a mess. They are rich and she's a mess. She let herself go. She has no control over the house, but the husband, he's hot, he's in shape, he is so nice, and she doesn't see it as a red flag, which, like, I never went to prison, and I feel like I would see it as a red flag, because what are you doing to her? There is no way there isn't something horribly wrong in this situation. She doesn't see any problem with that, and the dialogues were so bad, I totally believe that she was delusional and they were happening in her head. 100% believed it. So I hate when the book relies on main female character being incredibly dumb. Again, especially if you're going to tell me she spent years in prison. She learned nothing, absolutely nothing. So I don't understand the hype. I didn't care for the ending. I don't feel like it compensated for anything. Again, genuinely some of the worst writing I have ever read. And I want to make it clear that I'm not even that picky with the quality of writing. Like, if you look at my best books of the year, I read mostly for my enjoyment. I'm not someone that only reads classic or like literary fiction. It's not about that. I'm totally okay with reading popcorn reads. They're fun. You forget about them once you're done, and that's all you wanted. But again, we deserve better. No, please. I know some people read a book, it was popular, they pick it up, they haven't read that many books, they can't compare it. But seriously, this is so bad to the point that I'm concerned. And this one, I could feel very quickly that it was going to be this bad. The characters were so bad. You have this couple and they're visiting this house to try and buy it, and they find out that it's the house of this psychiatrist that died or disappeared or something. Yeah, disappeared 4 years prior. And they're just, once again, incredibly badly written. The characters, you can already tell there's something very wrong, and I looked up the spoilers because I wanted to know, and I'm so glad I didn't finish it because you can see it coming already. And again, I didn't make it far. I made it to like 70 pages into it. And like, you already know the boyfriend has a temper, and like there's a bunch of things like that already. And you're like, no, thank you. And the descriptions, maybe I can give you a description so you can see what I'm talking about. You can tell that these books were self-published because the descriptions, it's very specific to these kind of books. Like, she looked impeccable in a black silk dress and spiky pump. Oh, also, she keeps saying swoon, again, twice in like 70 pages. Why are you writing like this? This isn't normal. He pulls off his wool gloves. Like, it's always specifically like the brand or like the material. It's just so weird. I don't read books like that ever. You can just tell that something terrible happened, and like can tell that the author is going for like unreliable main character, and like from the spoilers that I've seen, it makes no sense. It doesn't. So I hated this. No. I usually don't judge people for liking whatever they like. I feel like we all have different tastes and it's fine. But like the fact that this author is publishing so many books, and she's supposed to be a physician. And she's publishing so many books. Like, I know, once again, some of them were self-published, so they're being published at the same time, but she's coming out with a suspicious amount of books. And like, allegedly, don't sue me, I have 4 mouths to feed. Allegedly, some of them sound heavily inspired by other popular books. So like, I just don't like the vibes here. This isn't for me, and that's okay. But there are other books that deserve so much more love than this. I will never read anything else by her. Actually, you know what? Very similarly, The Perfect Marriage. I read both of these, actually, never lie, in this one, in the same vlog. And I was trying popular ones just to see. And clearly, I do not want to get my recommendations from these kind of lists anymore, because this was equally concerningly bad. You have this man who is caught cheating on his wife because his mistress is found. So his wife is going to defend him, and things happen. So his wife is an attorney and she's going to defend him, but like literally from the beginning, once again, I did not make it far into it, like 50 something pages, she appears to be the worst attorney of all time, because she confesses to the police that they're trying for a baby. Like, what does it have to do with his arrest? Nothing. So she's acting really strangely. Once again, you get the weird descriptions that feel self-published with the whole like Ernest bag. Like, why are we going there? Why are we talking about how much it costs? It makes no sense. It's so weirdly specific. And like, the police, when they're arresting him, they're beating him up, and it just, again, makes no sense. Not that they wouldn't do that, but I mean, like, the way it's written is just not good. And in general, the female character, the way she was written, you could already tell I was not going to enjoy it. And like, she says things like, I'm 33 years old. Like, do I even have the energy to be a mom anymore? 33 is a very normal age to have children. Like, it's just... And the way she describes other female character through her eyes, no, it wasn't going to be for me. And again, put it quickly down. It's okay. What isn't okay, though, is the Ministry of Time winning the Goodreads Choice Award in the sci-fi category, because this isn't even sci-fi. Like, I know this year not much came out that was decent in the sci-fi category, but like, this is like romance. And there's like time travel, but that is a huge, huge stretch, because you don't really see any of it happening. Version of a world, futuristic, where we figure out how to time travel, and they bring to our time people that die in like tragic incidents. So like, it wouldn't alter time, and they're bringing this man, and like, there's a romance happening. I was so bored, I could not finish it. I tried so hard. I listened to it as an audiobook. Like, it's not hard to just keep listening. I couldn't do it. I looked up the ending and nothing happened. I wouldn't even call this a romance. Literally nothing happens. So in this case, I'm just mostly mad that people are liking it, because I really don't understand, why would this win? If you liked it, please tell me why, because I don't understand. And like, usually it's like, okay, like, people like this part of the book. I don't know. I just don't know what people liked. Is it the romance? Because it's definitely not sci-fi. My next big rant will have to do with The Bell Jar. This had been on my shelf for a couple of years, and I was so looking forward to it. I thought I was going to give this book 5-star. I had seen it on so many lists of like must-read kind of book, and I couldn't finish it because I hated it. I had seen the fig tree quote, which, fantastic quote. There are a few good ones in here. There's another one about the kitchen mat. The main female character is definitely talking about the place women have at the time in society. And okay, I understand people liking those. However, I had been told that it hadn't really aged well, and I feel like that's an understatement, because this is the most racist, homophobic, and fatphobic book I have read on Booktube. And like, to be fair, the main female character is unlikable. She's an awful character. There's no doubt about it. Literally from the beginning, she goes and drinks with a friend, and then she leaves her in the hallway in her own vomit because she doesn't want to deal with it. So like, not a great person. And as far as the racist comments, I'm going to put some on the screen because I'm not saying that out loud. The first 3 are from the first like 17 pages or something. Like, it is relentless. Some of them are quite original, frankly. I had never seen anyone insult Aztecs specifically, but you get that in here. And frankly, my main complaint is that I was incredibly bored. Like, nothing could compensate for any of that. Nothing really could. But I don't understand what people liked. I know that she is very depressed, and some people might have found that relatable. However, I feel like at this point, my main issue is with the response I've gotten from critiquing the book. The majority of my audience is women, and you guys love when I make fun of authors and call out the misogyny in their books, like I did with the first book in this video. You love when I make fun also of the comments that I get in reply, men saying that, oh, it's medieval inspired, that's why it's sexist, which, like, it's a fantasy world. Some of them will even go as far as saying that, oh, the misogyny is in there as a social commentary. And again, you have no problem understanding that just because the elements are there does not make it a social commentary. commentary, but it's the same thing, except that this time it's about a white woman and racism. You can love this book as much as you want, but I don't think it's okay to comment that I am not being fair because I'm reviewing it from a modern lens, which, like, no. I've always thought it was a really poor excuse because, first off, not everyone was like that. I would recommend Googling Benjamin Lay. That's a good example. And in general, I'm pretty sure people of color have never enjoyed being talked about this way. Sure, the character is racist, but the author included those elements in her personal journals and letters. And I feel like as a modern reader and as a modern reviewer, it is part of your responsibility to call out those problematic elements. Otherwise, you're just continuing to support the harmful stereotypes and you're part of the problem. You can love it as much as you want, but I feel like if you're going to include this book on a list of like must-read feminist book, which I have seen it so many times, you have to do it because otherwise feminism for whom? If your feminism doesn't include women of color, what's the point? Ultimately, I could rant about this for hours, but my point is that I didn't care about the book. I found it really boring. I didn't care about the writing, except, again, a few of the quotes. I can understand and appreciate the social commentary about the condition of women, white women at the time in society, especially dealing with mental illness. And it's not even a deal breaker for me for the main female character to be an awful person, but it's just the fact that it's supposed to be at least partially autobiographical. It's, again, a good mix of things I did not care for, and at this point, I just feel like I don't even want to talk about it anymore because I'm just going to rage at this point. So disappointed is an understatement. Did not care for it, and I will never look at people raving about this the same way. Again, please mention the problematic elements if you're going to do that. No. So you know how I was mentioning that just because a book contains certain elements does not make it a social commentary? This is how I feel about Annie Bot, which, like, no hard feelings to anyone that recommended this book, but I really regret reading it. I knew right away, but I had been told that, oh, the ending makes it worth it, which it doesn't. I should have known right away because of the plot, but you have this robot, this version of our world where you can get three kind of robots. You have the nanny kind, the maid kind, and the spicy kind. And of course, Annie is a spicy kind, and she's owned by this man. So you know exactly where this is going. This man basically tortures her. So at first, he treats her like a child when convenient, or like an adult again when convenient, and plays with her head because he knows that it causes her a ton of discomfort whenever he's unhappy. And man, is he unhappy. And while the story is about her finding, you know, her voice because she has the option of developing mentally, I found myself just hating the whole book because you're exposed to a ton of trauma and abuse. You also get a lengthy description of the spicy time and the fact that he gets her bigger boobs or he wants her to get skinnier. And I understand that the point is the fact that he's perceived by society and himself as a good guy when he isn't. I understand that. But once again, I feel like whenever the social commentary is so little and small and surface level, it might as well not be there. There were multiple doors that were open that the author did not take the opportunity to go through. And again, I understand the stories from the point of view of Annie, so maybe that's the reason. But again, a convenient excuse. For example, Annie looks suspiciously like his ex, and his friend, when he finds out, makes fun of him. But again, that's where it ends. You're also told that she couldn't be exactly the same, so her eye color is a bit lighter and her skin tone is a few shades lighter, which again, never mentioned again. As far as spoiler, essentially Annie is tricked into having spicy time with his friend, and he's mad at her, so he wants to get rid of her. However, because she has been developing well, the company offers to buy her, so she has to stay alive, like a copy of her, so they can resell it. So he has to keep her still in order to make a ton of money. So eventually they go to therapy together, which the therapist was the only one that mildly called him out. And eventually he forgives her, even though she's the one that was put through a ton of abuse by these two men. Cool. And then he convinced himself that he is now ready to have babies and get married with the robot, because that makes sense. And because he has deluded himself into thinking everything is fine now, he gives her her freedom. So she waits for him to fall asleep and she just leaves. That's the ending. I'm sorry, but you told me that the ending was going to be worth it. I thought she was going to him or something, but no, the most underwhelming ending, just her walking away. She does briefly think about the possible versions of her, thinking, oh, maybe they're going to follow me. But they had their memory erased. How would they know? How would they know? And again, that was another door that was open. I thought maybe there's going to be a robot uprising or something that was going to make the book worth it and good. No. So I feel like in general, this book is probably one of the ones that more people will disagree with me. They had a different experience. But again, for me, if I'm going to go through a ton of trauma myself reading this or listening to this actually. The ending needs to be worth it. Either you're going to have to include a ton more social commentary or you're going to have to make it some kind of revenge story because so underwhelming. I was pissed, honestly, when I was done with it because why would you recommend this book to me? Like, this is exactly the kind of book I have no interest in reading. I hated this book. Honestly, I don't recommend it. One book I read really early on this year that was a huge disappointment and frankly, not good, is The Last Murder at the End of the World. I have read 3 books by the author at this point. I feel like every book, my interest goes lower. In both cases, the ending was kind of weak, and this is by far the weakest ending and story in general. I tried so hard to enjoy this. The first half was okay, and then basically, this version of our world, something has happened you don't really know. What is left of humanity is on this island, and they're surrounded by this mist that could them. However, one of the scientists on the island was found dead, and they have a specific amount of time to figure out what happened, otherwise the mist will come and end them all. And all I can tell you is that it was incredibly boring. It managed to be mostly about people running after each other. The twist, you do get answers, which I appreciated. That's the only good part of the book. But frankly, it was so unsatisfying. I only finished it because of this author, because I had enjoyed one of his books and I was hoping, I was going to get more. And I found it incredibly forgettable. You're never going to hear me mention this book again. This is it. Like, it was just, I don't even know if I want to read more by the author because, again, it was so incredibly boring and just unsatisfying. So if that sounds like an appealing plot to you, check it out, but expect the worst. Even the writing was not good. It was not as good as his first book. And I just feel like at this point, I'm so underwhelmed by him. I usually stick to fiction for these videos, but I do want to rant again about The Age of Overthinking because this is by far the worst nonfiction I have read this year, and I just want to complain again. This is also the 3rd book I have read by the author, and it will be the last book that I read by the author because I feel like all 3 books I have read by her had titles that were a stretch, and this is by far the worst one. You would think The Age of Overthinking would be about overthinking. No, this is a collection of essays. It's basically a memoir. Yeah. Which, like, frankly, who are you? I don't care. Again, I've read 2 of the books by you. You would think if someone would care, it would be me. But no, I don't care about your ex-boyfriend. I don't care about your current boyfriend. None of the essays were about overthinking. There's a tiny section about manifestation, which, I was like, okay, finally, we're getting to the story, the actual title. No, that was about 2 lines. Nothing was about overthinking. The only overthinking was her feeling the pressure to write another book to give to her publisher because, listen, she has good titles. She has good covers, but at one point it becomes clickbait. It becomes a money grab. If you've read this, did you enjoy it? Because so far the reviews I've seen were pretty angry also because, again, you can't keep making me read a book, your book, thinking it's about a topic and then it's about something else. And by far, memoir is the worst. How is that a collection of essays? No. I also read The Fold, which clearly this year was not a great reading year for sci-fi. I didn't read many of them, and the ones that I read were not good. This is the 3rd one in this video. So this one is about alternate universe. And I wasn't even mad about the fact that the main character is one of those men that are so incredibly smart, which I know is a pet peeve for a lot of people, but I was totally open to it. He ends up he's basically forced to go work with these scientists trying to figure out what's going on because their bosses are suspicious because they're not really communicating what's going on. They have this door that is supposed to go to different version of our world and they're not communicating. So he goes there to figure out what's going on and things happen. Not going to spoil everything, but I will say that the female character, of course, becomes hypersexualized out of nowhere. She starts saying the F word constantly, and it's usually saying F me because, of course, she would say that. I feel like if you're going to make it suspicious that the female character is acting weird, this isn't your only option. You can write whatever you want. Again, this is your choice and this is the choice you're making, and it's a bad one. So once again, I have no more interest in reading more by the author because this is my first impression of you and it's not a good one. So the story was not good, and then you add those elements. No. Okay, the next one I wanted to rant about is about the audiobook, not the book. I want to be fair because Incidents Around the House was not a bad book. It's a horror one where a child has this thing in her closet that she calls Other Mommy. And the book had some good moments. I listened to it as an audiobook, right? So I feel like there were a few moments that were definitely creepy. I don't know if it's because the sun goes down early. I have a bunch of cats in the house, so they make noises. It can be uncomfortable. Some descriptions were creepy. It wasn't the most original story, but overall it was fine. But the audiobook made me remove at least a star.
Good night, Dado. Good night, Mommy. Mommy and Dado leave my room. I pull the covers up to my chin. Other Mommy comes out of the closet.
Okay, that's enough. I listened to about 10 seconds of it, and I was about to return it to the library, which good thing I got it from there. And then I realized I would have to wait super long to get the ebook, so I pushed through. Let me tell you, I started at 1.5, and by the end I was at 2 speed, and I was still struggling. Why would you do that? And like 90% of the book is through the point of view of the child, so it's just straight up painful. I wish narrators would stop doing voices like that. It's giving me flashback. I think it was 2017 that made it to my worst or most disappointing books of the year. I read Waking Gods, and there was another child making a voice similar to this, and it sounded like a bad corn through the whole book. It was so bad. And like, it's okay to make different voices, but why that one? Why that one? So as you can see, I feel like this year was not that bad. I feel like I'm not as mad as I was in some of the past years. I'm learning to get rid of books before I get to that point. I've been decluttering my shelves a lot. I feel like in general, there were more disappointment than truly like hatred towards the books that I've read in 2024. So I'll put on the screen some of the most disappointing books actually I have read, but also my best if you want to balance things out. And I will see you in my next video. Also would love to hear your worst books of 2024 because it's the time. Rent away.